Holy Gospel is taken from the Gospel according to St. John, the 13th chapter and the 21st verse. After saying this, Jesus was troubled in spirit and declared, "Very truly I tell you, one of you will betray me." The disciples looked at one another, uncertain of whom he was speaking. One of his disciples, the one whom Jesus loved, was reclining next to him. Simon Peter therefore motioned to him to ask Jesus of whom he was speaking. So while reclining next to Jesus, he asked him, "Lord, who is it?" Jesus answered, "It is the one to whom I give this piece of bread when I have dipped it in the dish." So when he had dipped the piece of bread, he gave it to Judas, son of Simon Iscariot. After he received the piece of bread, Satan entered into him. Jesus said to him, "Do quickly what you are going to do." Now no one at the table knew why he said this to him. Some thought that because Judas had the common purse, Jesus was telling him, "Buy what we need for the festival," or that he should give something to the poor. So after receiving the piece of bread, he immediately went out. And it was night. This is the Gospel of Christ.
In the name of God, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Amen. Today is the third part of a four-part reflection on passages from John's Gospel that are set for Holy Week. Today, in our journey through Holy Week, we reach our contemplation of Jesus' words at the Last Supper. Now it is Jesus and the 12 who remain, dining together one final time as Jesus reaches out to the one who must betray him. Our theme this evening is friendship. How do you imagine that room where they gathered to eat? Do you see it as the Renaissance artists would have it, all conveniently gathered around one side of the table to allow an unobstructed view for the observer? Perhaps not. Think instead of a meal among friends that you have shared. Not something that we've been able to do in the last year, but surely something that will return. A meal with friends, not a formal meal. Friends close enough to be able to speak truthfully, to bring you down a peg or two when your self-importance breaks through. Friends with a shared history. Friends who can tease and laugh together while remembering past events. It is in gatherings like these that time flies by, precious moments slipping past with each mouthful, and each shared remembered moment of joy or sadness. How much more so for Jesus, as his time with his friends ticks away. He has already unsettled them by insisting on washing their feet, and he has begun to speak of what is important. Now we turn to Judas. Judas has been portrayed throughout history as the ultimate villain, but I think we should remember that he is one of Jesus' friends. Do not forget that Jesus washed the feet of Judas. He was still there at that point, still in the group. Even knowing the betrayal that was to follow, Jesus loved his friend and served him. Now gather close and listen as Jesus has important words to share. One of you will betray me. One of you, not a stranger, not a random member of the crowd, but one of the 12 who have travelled together and formed a group. And so Jesus takes a piece of bread, dips it in a dish and hands it to Judas. We miss the significance of this gesture, because that is a moment of intimacy between trusted friends, as if to say, taste this dish and see how good it is. And despite Jesus saying aloud that this is the sign of the betrayer, it seems to pass over the heads of the other disciples. Yet Judas knows, and he knows that Jesus knows, and he stands and he leaves. John's Gospel makes much of Jesus being troubled in spirit. Yet in this exchange, we can only imagine the turmoil of Judas. Have you ever been part of a friendship group where you didn't quite fit in? Perhaps you joined later than the others and there were too many shared stories that you don't remember because you weren't there. Maybe the others were fitter or richer than you, or from a different culture. There can be a loneliness even in a group. And how easy to begin to turn away, to deal with the hurt or pain by dismissing the group as irrelevant. We know Judas was a man who struggled to trust others. Why else would he steal from the group? In the different Gospels, we hear snatches of what might have been his motivation. Somehow, he was disillusioned about Jesus, no longer believing his message, no longer understanding what he came to do. Maybe he still thought the Messiah should conquer through strength of arms. Maybe he was afraid of the consequences that a revolution would bring. Whatever the reason, someone had to do it. There had to be a betrayal for the cross to happen. And Judas was the friend who walked away from perfect friendship and could not live with his own betrayal. We all pity Judas. Many revile him. Yet who among us has not turned away from Jesus at one point or another? Who among us has not sometimes chosen the easy way over the right way? Who among us has not allowed feelings of loneliness or resentment or not fitting in to turn our hearts away from what is good and right and true? Today, remember your friends, those who are lost to you and those who remain faithful, those that you have stood by and those from whom you have walked away. Remember them and pray for them. Don't despise Judas, but think mercifully of him, remembering him as a friend of Jesus. And as the meal continues, Jesus takes one more step further towards the inevitable. He lives with the sadness of betrayal. He shoulders the loss of a once trusted friend. He turns to the remaining friends and speaks, as we shall hear tomorrow, of love. Amen.